I still remember the day my own children decided that I had become a problem they needed to solve. At 73 years old, I had slowed down, yes. My hands trembled a little when I poured my morning coffee, and I sometimes forgot where I placed my glasses, but I wasn't helpless. I wasn't confused, and I certainly wasn't incapable of understanding what was happening around me. My name is Richard Whitmore, and for 45 years I built Whitmore Logistics from a tiny warehouse near the Chicago rail yard into one of the largest regional shipping companies in the Midwest. Trucks with our logo run through Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, and beyond. Hundreds of employees depend on that company to feed their families, but none of that seemed to matter to my children anymore. After my wife Eleanor passed away 3 years ago, everything changed. My house became too quiet, and my children suddenly became very concerned about my well-being. Concerned. That was the word they liked to use. My son Daniel started visiting more often, always bringing up the same topics. Dad, are you managing the house okay? Dad, maybe you shouldn't be driving so much. Dad, have you thought about assisted living? At first, I believed he was simply worried about me. After all, losing your mother affects children deeply, even when they're adults. But then, my daughter Karen joined the conversation. Karen had always been ambitious. Even as a child, she was the type who counted her birthday money twice and asked how interest worked at the bank. One evening, she sat across from me at the dining table, folding her hands with a carefully practiced expression of concern. Dad, we just want what's best for you. That phrase. When people say they want what's best for you, they rarely mean it. They mean what's best for them. I listened quietly as Daniel and Karen explained their plan. They had found a beautiful nursing home about 30 minutes outside the city, private rooms, gardens, a medical staff available 24 hours a day. It's really more like a resort, Karen said with a smile. I noticed neither of them looked me in the eyes when they said it. What makes you think I need a nursing home? I asked calmly. Daniel shifted in his chair. Well, you're not getting any younger, Dad, and running the company, that's a lot of stress. That comment made me smile inside. Running the company. Daniel believed he was already doing that. 2 years earlier, I had stepped back from daily operations and allowed him to take the position of acting CEO. The board had approved the decision, and Daniel proudly walked around believing he had finally taken his father's throne. But what he didn't understand was something very simple. Stepping back from management is not the same as giving away ownership. I still owned 51% of Whitmore Logistics, and the board of directors still answered to me. But my children didn't know that. I never told them. You might wonder why a father would hide something like that from his own children. The answer is simple. Power reveals character, and I wanted to see theirs. So when Karen placed a glossy brochure for the nursing home in front of me, I didn't argue. I didn't fight. I simply nodded slowly. If you think that's best, I said. The relief on their faces was immediate. Daniel stood up and clapped me on the shoulder. Trust us, Dad. This will be great for you. Great for me, of course. The following week, they helped me pack. Watching your children pack your belongings into boxes while talking about the future of your company is a strange experience. Daniel kept mentioning modernizing operations. Karen kept asking questions about company accounts and assets. I answered politely, giving them just enough information to keep them comfortable. But I noticed something else. They were already planning their lives after removing me from the picture. That realization didn't hurt as much as you might think. When you've lived as long as I have, you understand something about human nature. Greed grows quietly. It starts as ambition. Then it becomes entitlement. Finally, it becomes betrayal. The nursing home was exactly as Karen described. Clean hallways, friendly nurses, gardens outside the windows. But the moment my children left, I understood the truth. This wasn't a place they had chosen for my comfort. It was a place where I could be forgotten. The first night was the hardest, not because of the room or the unfamiliar sounds, but because I sat there thinking about the company I had built from nothing, about the employees who had worked beside me for decades, about the drivers who still called me Mr. Whitmore, even though I told them to use my first name, and I wondered how long it would take before Daniel started making decisions that would damage everything we had built. 3 days later, I got my answer. One of the nurses handed me my phone. "You have a call, Mr. Whitmore." The voice on the other end belonged to Margaret Lewis. Margaret had been my executive assistant for 27 years. "Richard," she said quietly, "I think you should know what's happening." Daniel had started restructuring the company. He planned to sell 2 warehouses and outsource part of the fleet to a cheaper contractor. Those warehouses had been the backbone of our Midwest operations for 30 years. Selling them would bring quick cash, but it would weaken the company permanently. I closed my eyes and listened carefully. "Has the board approved this?" I asked calmly. "Not yet," Margaret replied. "They're meeting next Monday." Monday, 5 days away. I looked around my quiet room at the nursing home. My children believed they had removed me from the game. They believed I was finished. But they had forgotten something very important. Ownership never leaves the room. That evening, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Margaret. The second was to our company lawyer. The third was to the chairman of the board. On Monday morning, a black town car stopped in front of the nursing home. When I walked into the boardroom of Whitmore Logistics, every member of the board was already seated. Daniel stood at the head of the table, confidently presenting his modernization plan. He looked surprised when the door opened. His face went pale when he saw me. "Dad, what are you doing here?" I took my seat at the end of the table, the seat I had occupied for 40 years. "I thought I should attend today's meeting," I said calmly. Karen wasn't there, but Daniel's reaction was enough. "You're supposed to be resting," he stammered. "I am rested," I replied. The chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Whitmore still holds majority ownership of the company," he reminded everyone in the room. Daniel's expression changed immediately. He looked confused, then shocked, then angry. "You still own the company?" he said. 51%, I replied. Silence filled the room. Daniel slowly sat down. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded. I leaned forward slightly. "Because I wanted to see how you would behave if you thought I was gone." The board listened carefully as Daniel explained his restructuring plan. Then they listened as I explained why it would destroy the company's long-term stability. When the vote was called, the result was unanimous. Daniel's plan was rejected. Then I made a second motion. Effective immediately, Daniel Whitmore was removed as acting CEO. The board approved it without hesitation. Daniel stared at me in disbelief. "You're firing your own son?" "No," I said quietly. "I'm protecting the company." 2 days later, Karen came to the nursing home. She stormed into my room, furious. "How could you do that to Daniel?" I looked at her calmly. "How could you send your father away like an inconvenience?" She didn't answer, because she couldn't. That afternoon, I signed the paperwork that transferred operational control of Whitmore Logistics to a new CEO, a woman named Laura Bennett, who had worked with us for 15 years and understood the company better than anyone else. As for Daniel and Karen, they learned a valuable lesson. Just because you think someone is weak doesn't mean they've lost their power, and just because someone is old doesn't mean they've stopped seeing the truth. A week later, I left the nursing home, not because my children brought me back, but because I chose where I wanted to live, and for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't expected: peace, because the company was safe, and the illusion my children had created about me was finally gone.